What's up, Purdue fans? Welcome to another episode of Boiler Banter. I am Brandon Brown, joined as always by Dustin Schutte. And Dustin, we're getting into it's the end of April now, May, June, July. Those are kind of the dog days of collegiate sports. But with stuff like spring football and the transfer portal and just kind of everything that's makes up college sports these days, news never really dies. And there were a couple pretty decent chunks of news out of West Lafayette this past week, and I know one of them we had kind of talked about back and forth, and it was going to be a really big deal either way that it went. And the way that it went has Purdue fans really, really happy, I'm sure. And that is the official announcement from Braden Smith that he will be returning, which is what we thought. I mean, that's kind of what I think most people expected. But nevertheless, that's obviously a huge deal getting a guy like that back for next season.
Yeah, I think it happened like just hours after we had recorded last week. So we were a little bit behind on that news, but that's okay. Yeah, I think we had probably pretty much exhausted what we thought was going to happen. I'm a little surprised now. He could still enter his name into the NBA draft and just to get an evaluation and get with scouts and see where he needs to improve and what tweaks maybe to his game he needs to make in order to be successful at the next level and get a high draft stock. Coming out of the college game next season. So I was a little bit surprised that he made the decision to return before maybe testing the NBA draft waters. But other than that, I don't like the transfer portal news. I don't know that there was any substantial evidence to that, but with social media and the rumors and the whisperings that are able to be put out there by just about anybody, I think there was maybe a little bit of nerves about his return, but ultimately Purdue gets the reigning Big Ten Player of the Year, the reigning Bob Cousy Award winner back for next season. And so that's obviously everybody had kind of penciled them in. There's a reason they were a top 5 team heading into next season because everybody expected Braden Smith to come back. But I think in today's college basketball world and just college athletics in general, I think with a player of that magnitude, there's a sense of relief when they make that sort of announcement. And that's what's funny. Like you look at a lot of the comments on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and a lot of it is just like, have we reached this point where players have to announce they're coming back? And it's like, yeah, absolutely they do. Because with each player that announces, there's a little bit of relief that comes with it. So not a huge surprise, but I think nonetheless an exciting and relieving message from Braden Smith that he'll be back next season.
I think now more than ever, you almost expect an announcement. Like it has to be announced that I'm not only am I coming back as opposed to maybe going pro, but I'm staying at the school I'm at. Like that almost requires an announcement now, as opposed to hitting the transfer portal or testing the waters. What offer can I get? I mean the Nico Iamaleava stuff with Tennessee football and UCLA now is it's been like that's kind of where we're at now. That seems a little bit extreme, but it probably isn't and probably won't be, and stuff like that will probably become even more and more common. So yeah, like you said, probably the expectation all along, but certainly Purdue fans can sleep a little easier now knowing that Braden Smith is coming back. I want to just discuss something real quick because it's great. You see this every single year with college basketball. How is it that I would almost say consensus, because I mean, just about everywhere you read, he's mentioned as the best point guard in America. Like that's a pretty common moniker thrown out there for him. How is it that a dude like that is not all over draft boards? I don't really like, how can he be so good in college, but like maybe it doesn't quite translate to the NBA, and that's why he's coming back to Purdue.
Yeah, you kind of almost understood. I don't want to say I've got to watch how I word this, but you could almost understand it more with Zach Edey because we hadn't really seen him stretch the floor at Purdue. Like he was a low post player. I think everybody underestimated his ability to screen and his ability to move in the pick and roll. But I think people just were like, well, 7'4", you don't really see that unless they're shooting the 3 ball in the NBA. Like you got to be able to play defense. You got to be able to guard multiple positions, and you have to be able to knock down shots from all areas of the floor. And I think because he didn't do that during his time at Purdue, that's not what Matt Painter asked him to do. That was not what was best for Purdue. There were some questions about whether or not he'd be able to, or his game would be able to evolve at the NBA level. Now, a year later, I think he's pretty much proven everybody wrong. Like I thought he would be successful in the NBA, but I think I think he's exceeding even the expectations that I have. He's just been really good this first season, especially since the Memphis Grizzlies made the coaching change. But for Braden Smith, I have to imagine that his height is probably a big factor in that, because he's been able to get his teammates the ball. Like when you look at the discrepancy of like his assist totals, I think now it's Trey Kaufman-Renn is the number one guy who's been the biggest, recipient of Braden Smith assists. If I am thinking about how to word that, the way he's able to play defensively, I'm not saying he's going to be a guy who's an all NBA player, but if you guys watch, like I watch a lot of the Pacers, TJ McConnell is a guy who comes off the bench, creates steals, finds his teammates, and gets his little mid-range jumper going. That's Braden Smith's game. And Braden Smith can shoot the three ball. Like there is definitely a spot in the league. Maybe there's people that think he's too much of a risk. I don't know. But this is another case, in my opinion. This was a kid who did not have a lot of offers coming out of high school, out of Westfield. Like Purdue kind of took a chance on him. And he's another kid that's just proven everybody wrong at every step of the way. So for him to be on the draft board at number 58, and again, that was a few weeks ago. So maybe he's moved up, maybe he's moved down. I don't know. But I think somebody's going to get a steal when they do select him in the NBA draft next season. I just think he's that good, that talented. Like I said, that's not to say he's going to be the next Manu Ginobili or Steve Nash or Jason Kidd or anybody like that. But I do think he can at least be a really good role player for just about any team in the NBA.
I watched a decent amount of the NBA, and you mentioned a guy like McConnell. I know like Colin Gillespie's getting a lot of minutes right now in Phoenix, even though they're pretty banged up and they haven't been very good. But like he's at least as good as those guys. I mean, we can find some other small white dude comparisons probably, but like
right.
I also think of like I'm a Pistons fan. I remember like they had Corey Joseph for several years as like he's better than a guy like that. I feel like he can do all of the things that some of those guys can do and more. I think so. It's just one of those things. You see it every single year. Guys who absolutely dominate in college. And for various reasons, it just doesn't quite translate to the NBA. I don't know if that'll be the case for him. I'm with you. I think he can be a role player, a bench guy at least, and maybe more than that when the time comes.
Well, the thing that's interesting to me is it's not like you've seen guys at the college game. To me, the guys who don't necessarily have great NBA careers are guys that just score at the college level. Like Jimmer Fredette is a guy who comes to mind. He was an elite shooter at BYU. And he might have had a few decent seasons in the NBA, but he didn't have the standing power. Like if you're a good passer, and like you can play no matter what the size is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's just I don't know if that's a criticism. I don't know if they don't like his speed. I think he's super quick. I think he's an intelligent, high IQ player. So like to me, when I watch him play, I see TJ McConnell. That's who I see now. Could he be better? Could he be worse? I don't know. But that's the kind of player TJ McConnell's been in the league for what, like 10, 11 years now? I might be overestimating that a little bit, but I just think that when you watch guys like that play, when you have an elite ability to pass, and if you can stay in front of your man, now maybe that's the big thing. Maybe they don't think he can stay in front of guys or they can shoot over him because he's only 6 foot tall. I don't know, but he's pesky. I think he's just one of those guys that nobody's going to want to play. Like when they come in, it's like, God, this guy's annoying. I think he's going to be one of those type of NBA players. And like I said, there have been guys that have made a career out of that. And like you said, I think if he maintains a second round status even after next season, I think he's going to be an absolute steal for whatever team takes him.
I mean, look at Zach Edey's teammate, undrafted Scottie Pippen Jr., carving out a major role for himself in the NBA, and he's not very big, but he's just Jose Alvarado for the Pelicans. These smaller dudes who are pesky. They're smart. They can shoot it enough, and I think Braden Smith is as good of a shooter, or maybe better than both of those guys from outside.
Right.
Probably not very, probably comparable in size and athleticism. I mean, either one of those guys are, above the rim, flying out of the gym type of athletes. I mean, yeah, I think there is a spot for dudes like that. And you mentioned him being quick on the offense, especially. He's got a great handle, and he's like shifty and change of pace. He's hard to stay in front of because of the way he moves and stuff. Now, whether that translates to the defensive end, that's a big deal. You got to be able to guard one-on-one in the NBA. So yeah, it's just an interesting point. I mean, you can go back every single year, and some of the best players in college just don't make it in the NBA. For a lot of different reasons, like you said, size being one of them. I mean, it is kind of crazy when you watch a college basketball game. The guys they're big dudes. They're 6'8", 6'10" guys. But then a guy like that goes to the pros sometimes, and they look small. It's like, wow, there is a noticeable jump when it comes to just sheer size in the league.
And I do think that there's an advantage to, like, I don't know if I'm going to word this how I want to, but like Braden Smith has had to learn how to play small anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's going to be accustomed to playing against bigger bodies. Like, that's not going to be a culture shock to him. Now, the athleticism might be, but again, I think the fact that he's had to learn to play like that anyway, like that's not something he's going to have to learn. It's not like he's 6'7", 6'8", and then everybody around him is 6'10", right? Like, he's had to learn how to craft his game. And again, the way he's able to draw in defenders, the way he's able to change speeds, the way he works in the pick and roll, like the NBA is a pick and roll league. So
absolutely.
Like, to me, it is very surprising that he's gotten such a low grade, but and maybe Brandon, if this was 10 years ago, maybe even 6 or 7 years ago, maybe he tests the draft waters because you're not getting paid. But the benefit of NIL is you can get some money here, come back and improve your draft stock. Whereas, a couple of years ago, he might have had to take a flyer and say, hey, if I'm getting a second round status right now, I'm headed off to the NBA. So it's an interesting time. But I do think that he is, I just think it's crazy because he's one of the most valued players in college basketball, but he just doesn't get the same love. But I also think a lot of that in the NBA draft comes down to people. I think they overvalue athleticism, and that's certainly important in that league. But I think that at the risk of, like, you still want high IQ guys who can pass, guys who can make shots. And he's been able to do that. He's proven it multiple times.
Also, they put a premium on potential and youth, and he's going into being he'll be a senior, right? He's a junior now, so he's probably, I don't know his exact age, he's probably 22 years old, and that's 4 years lost in the NBA at this point. All these 18-year-olds that get drafted. So anyway, there you have it. Braden Smith will be back at Purdue next year. Big deal, obviously, for Matt Painter and company. And joining him as of this past week will be Liam Murphy, a 6'7" kind of swing player out of University of North Florida. I just did a quick little read up on him real fast. And from what I see, you see 6'7", you see the size, the length, and you see a really, really good outside shooter, which, just throw another great shooter out there for Purdue and let the threes fly, right? That's what they always look for.
Exactly. Well, that's what Matt Painter wants to do. He wants to surround. Now that they've got Oscar Clough, they're going to have Daniel Jacobson back, and obviously with Trey Kaufman-Renn. Well, we haven't seen enough of Daniel Jacobson to know yet if he's as good of a passer as the other two, but Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough are both really good passers. They both averaged above 2.5. No, Clough was at 2.8 assists, and Kaufman-Renn, I think, was around 2.2, 2.3 per game. But really good vision there. And so the key there is Matt Painter wants to surround those guys with shooters. And so they've obviously done that. Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith can knock down threes. And obviously now you bring in Liam Murphy, who shot it at a 42. I don't have my notes.
I think it was 43.9, I think was the number I saw. So you approach 45%, you're knocking them down.
Yeah. So you're in that 44-45% range. And so to me, this is basically your replacement for Camden Heide. Now, he's not going to bring the same athleticism as Camden Heide. I don't know about the defensive end if he's quite as skilled or quite as quick, but in the terms of the offensive ability to stretch the floor, I think that he's going to be – I think this is a guy that you could play. If you're going to go with a small ball lineup, you could probably move Trey Kaufman-Renn to the 5 and play this guy at the 4. If you want to go more of a traditional lineup where maybe you have Clough and Jacobson alongside Trey Kaufman-Renn, you can move him into the 3, and he's going to be able to stretch the floor. I think a lot, maybe not in terms of the physicality and the toughness and the rebounding ability, but he's also a Mason Gillis type. Like Mason Gillis shot above 40% 2 years ago for Purdue, and that really helped things out in the interior. So I think Matt Painter knows, like, hey, we've got 2 elite post players in Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough. and we're bringing Daniel Jacobson back. And I think, like I said, I think he's going to be a really good player. I think at some point before his career's done at Purdue, he's going to be the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's that good. I think he's shown that much potential in just one game. I mean, I have to keep reminding myself it was one game, right? Like, but so yeah, I think the way he scores, it's more of a spot up shooter. He gets a lot of his buckets in transition. So he's not going to be a guy that's probably going to take many guys off the dribble. He's not going to be a guy that probably works in your screen and roll much. He might be able to come off screens and knock down a few shots. If he's part of that second unit, which I assume he's going to be, they may run the occasional play for him. But I think this is just a guy that I need you to move. I need you to find a way to get open. And when Trey Coppin-Wren dishes it out, I need you to knock down or take a really good look. And so I think that's exactly what Purdue needed, more of those guys to go along with their interior pieces. And I think that's a really nice pickup. And he kind of fits the Matt Painter mold, much like Oscar Clough, in the sense of he's a graduate transfer, experience, has proven himself. And I think this is a really nice addition, especially for that second unit.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, especially when you talk about his perceived role. I mean, you're not asking this guy to come in and score 20 and play 35 minutes. So, yeah, that's you got to have guys like that. You got to have knockdown shooters. You got to have some dudes who can come in and splash it off the bench. And that's what like I said, I did a very quick read up on him. I didn't know much about North Florida. I didn't know much about this guy. It looks like it'd be a good fit. So you're starting to name, I don't know what we're at now, maybe 8 or 9 different players on this roster that we've talked about and kind of highlighted a little bit. And another one that I think is getting some attention, and both you and I are hoping to do this young man justice with his name. But Omer Meyer, an Israeli prospect who's played some overseas ball and done some nice things. But I wanted to read what ESPN has about him and have you either agree, disagree, expand on, or whatever. Just, again, as I'm doing my research, kind of getting ready to talk to you about this stuff, this sounds like another – I'm curious to see how he fits and what it looks like at Purdue. So this is what it says. First of all, 6'4", 215 pounds, so much bigger than Braden Smith, but, kind of billed as a pretty nice two-way guard. But this is what they wrote about him. Meyer visited Purdue after the Hoop Summit and also spent time at Duke and Auburn, so 2 other marquee programs that were interested in this kid, ultimately committing to Boilermakers and Coach Matt Painter. The plan is for Meyer to develop alongside All-American Braden Smith, who is considered the best point guard in college basketball, and then assume greater responsibility when Smith graduates next summer. Do you think that's what it looks like? Does he have a chance to start at the 2? I mean, that's big enough to play the 2, but what's his future? What's his immediate future and maybe down the line look like for this international prospect, Omer Meyer?
Yeah, I can't ever. I struggle with that too. It's like the syllables.
There's like 2 similar sounding or something. It throws me off which way to say which one.
So I think that's a good thought from ESPN. I think he will play. So the thing I've said, and I want to get this out of the way because I'm going to learn, or I'm going to lose my train of thought. But one of the things that I've said is that, Braden Smith had to play 38 to 40 minutes. I think he averaged somewhere around 37 minutes per game this past season. And he was really good even when he had to play 40 minutes. Now, there were times when you could tell it looked like, hey, they've got to play 3 games in 6 days. And he did look a little worn down. Now, again, he would put up numbers. It's like, that's a good day for most point guards. For Braden Smith, you can tell he's kind of worn down a little bit. Imagine maybe not the same type of numbers in terms of volume, but imagine that on 32 minutes, how efficient he can be, how effective he can be, not just in a 1-game setting, but over the course of a 31-game regular season, and then obviously throw in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. So this is a kid who can relieve some of that pressure. I think they're going to trust him to come in for Braden Smith off the bench and maybe give them, 6 to 8 minutes at the point guard position. And then he can probably move around and play the 2. I don't know if he would fit into that 3. That would be a good question. I think they would probably, if they're going to play him and Fletch at the same time, they're probably going to move Fletcher Lawyer over to the 3, would be my guess. I don't know. But I think that this is a kid who's probably not going to be a starter, but he's going to provide that nice punch of scoring when Braden Smith is not on the floor. He'll direct traffic when Braden Smith is not on the floor. I think he can also provide them with another spot-up shooter. Right? Like he can knock that. He scored 13 points in a EuroLeague game as an 18-year-old, right? Like, so this is a kid who's not unfamiliar with tough competition and living up to a lot of the hype. So I think he's probably going to play mostly the 1 and the 2, and he'll probably split that time. Last season, they didn't really like to play Fletcher above. I'm trying to remember the number. I think Matt Painter said maybe 32 was what they felt like optimum for him. So if you have 6 minutes of Braden Smith and then 8 to 10 minutes for Fletcher Lawyer, this is a kid who's maybe looking at 14, 15 minutes a game. Now, again, maybe he's a lot better than we anticipate, and he can carve out a role in a starting position. I don't know. It's going to be incredibly interesting. I still think what would be interesting is does he take the place of CJ Cox? Like, I don't think he's going to take the place of Fletcher, but could he move over and we see Fletcher at the 3 and then Omar Meyer start at the 2? I mean, that's a possible solution. I think the one thing that CJ brings is he is probably a better defensive player. And so Purdue's going to need some of that defense. And then you also, again, you're going to want some of that spark with your second unit. So it's going to be incredibly interesting to me how they handle this. But that's what the summer's for. They're probably going to get to work in June. And we'll see how he fits in. But this was a kid that as soon as he committed, Purdue became the betting favorite to win the national championship, surpassing Duke, Houston, some of those other teams. Louisville was in that mix, UConn. So this is a really talented kid. And it's one of the bigger commitments at Purdue, probably since Caleb Swanigan, if I'm being honest. Like, in terms of like a 5-star caliber player, a highly touted recruit that a lot of people were interested in, some of the big boys were interested in, and for him to commit to Purdue. And I think with this kid, I would suspect you want to get 2 years out of him, and you feel that like that was a successful game plan.
Yeah, I mean, reading about him, man, he's an intriguing kid. I mean, when you talk about him playing against other kids his age, the U18 championships last year, I mean, you're talking 18, 17, 18-year-old kid, he'll be maybe 18, 19 when the season starts. I'm not sure exactly when his birthday is, but I mean, you're talking about a 6'4" guard averaging 18 points, almost 7 rebounds, and over 5 assists a game against players his age. And then you mentioned, he's playing in EuroLeague champion. Those are grown men he's playing against, and he's still putting up decent numbers. So you wonder what that looks like and how that could transfer to the Big Ten. Obviously, probably bodes well for him. And now that you've got him in the fold, you mentioned Liam Murphy. We talked about Oscar Clough before. Braden Smith coming back. I mean, things are really starting to take shape. What's left? Like, what's left for Matt Painter, the roster? How much more movement do you expect? Like, what's left in terms of filling it out and being ready to roll next year?
Yeah, I think they're pretty much ready to roll with this lineup because they've also got Antoine West coming in. He was a 3-star recruit out of Toledo, Ohio. I'll be surprised if we'll see. I mean, we've seen kids come in, right? Like Braden Smith came in and played immediately as a freshman. And Miles Colvin, like those guys maybe didn't get significant minutes, but they were, they would play 8 to 10 minutes as freshmen. So we'll see. He may take a redshirt year next season just because this, as you mentioned, like, you go 8, 9, 10 deep, and you feel pretty good about every player on your roster right now. So we'll see what he does. You got Riley Burgess coming back next season. He's also in that mix to potentially play some of the 4. Maybe we'll see a red shirt for him. I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting thing. I think they have 1 scholarship available, if I'm not mistaken, still at the time that we're recording this. Who knows when this, by the time it comes out, somebody else could have committed. But I think if they do add a piece, it's going to be a future piece. I don't think it's going to be probably anybody that's going to be able to jump in and help them right now because of the way college basketball is, college athletics is. You might add a young kid, but I don't think it's going to be anybody that probably fits into your equation for this coming season. And in terms of like, I want to say this too, because I sent out a tweet about it, and it's I think the 25-26 season is probably going to be the most anticipated year for Purdue basketball that I ever remember. Now, a lot of people will say, well, what about that 23-24 season with Edey coming back? Obviously, another year under Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. And I think the difference that year was Purdue just wanted to get to the Final Four. And I'm not talking about the stat. They obviously wanted to win a national championship. Purdue fans wanted to win a national championship, but the expectation was, let's get to the Final Four. We haven't been there since 1980. We have a really good team to get to the Final Four. Now people are legitimately talking about Purdue as the national champion and like the favorite to do it. And I don't think before that 23-24 season, I still think UConn was in the mix. There was probably another team or two that was thought to be a true contender. I'm sure Duke was in that mix. Alabama was really good that year. So, but this is a team that, like, I think if they don't win the national championship, I think there's going to be some disappointment.
Wow.
And I don't know if there's been a time when you could say that for Purdue basketball.
That's interesting. Well, as they get ready to embark on the pursuit of a national title, if you're playing a game tomorrow, Coach Schutte, who's your starting five? Who you rolling the balls out there with?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Well, I think
we're going to end on this, by the way. So
yeah,
think about it for a second. You got a couple that are, I think, probably written in stone. Just you got Trey Coffin-Wren, you got Braden Smith. Those are in stone. I don't know. The other three, are they in pencil? Are they in pen? Like, what are you thinking?
I think Fletcher's probably in stone. I think Braden and Fletch are starters. I think Trey Coffin-Wren is obviously a starter. So I think 3. Man, that's such a tough question. I think you're going to see CJ Cox. And I'm gonna say I think Daniel Jacobson's gonna be the starter. I think he's gonna be the starting center at 7-4. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean he's gonna play the most minutes. Mm-hmm. You saw a few years ago where Trey Coffin-Wren was a starter at the 4 alongside Zach Edey, but Mason Gillis actually got the bulk of the minutes. He came off the bench and provided them. So we could see something like that. We could see Matt Painter interchange based on. I don't know that he wants to do that, but I think Oscar Clough. I just think Daniel Jacobson provides more of a better defensive presence, and Purdue's going to need that. And so to me, and then again, when you get somebody off the bench, if you want somebody to come in for Trey Coffin-Wren or Daniel Jacobson, who better than a guy who averaged 17 and 12 a season ago, right? So that's my hunch, but we'll see. I think that's the biggest question. Is it going to be Oscar Clough at the 5, or is it going to be Daniel Jacobson at the 5? To me, that's the biggest question mark for me.
I mean, and man, you're talking about the depth there. You're basically, and we just talked about Meyer, who might be good enough to start, but just doesn't.
Yeah.
You might have 7 or 8 starters, but I mean, obviously you can only start 5, and that's a pretty good problem to have.
I think you have I think even Liam Murphy would be a potential starter on a lot of teams. Like, I think that they have legit 9 starters on this roster.
Yeah.
There's just not enough. You can only start 5 guys. As Matt Painter always says, I've only got 200 minutes. And, so I got to divvy it up and do what's best for Purdue. So it's certainly a good problem to have.
No doubt. Well, we said we were just going to do a measly little short episode today, and there's almost 30 minutes on your Monday for Purdue basketball. So, I mean, when you're speaking to the expert, man, that's what you get. You get 30 minutes of good stuff from Dustin. As always, man, thanks for the time, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks, Brandon.